Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sydney, and if you are new here, this is just a place where we can talk about all things spooky, whether that's haunted houses, true crime, scam stories. If that sounds interesting to you, make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. So the next couple of videos here are going to be all about The Exorcist. Today we're going to be talking about the story that inspired the infamous book, The Exorcist. Next week, we are going to be talking about the filming of The Exorcist, what went wrong, everything spooky about that. And then the week after that, we are going to be talking about a murder case surrounding The Exorcist. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you kind of keep an eye on the channel just because those videos will be going up in the next couple weeks here. And I'm really excited about it. Without any further ado, let's hop right into today's story. So today we are going to be talking about the story that inspired The Exorcist, and that would be the Exorcism of Roland Doe. So obviously Roland Doe is a pseudonym for his real last name, which was later found out in his life. So his real name was actually Roland Hunkler, but I'll just probably be going by Roland Doe because it's just a little shorter and easier to say. So we don't know a whole lot about Roland's childhood, honestly. We do know that he was born on June 1st of 1935 in Cottagetown, Maryland. He was born into a German Lutheran family, and he was an only child. Since Roland was an only child, he hung out mainly around adults, as there was nobody in his family that was really his own age. When Roland was 13 years old, his Aunt Harriet passed away, whom he was very, very close to. So his Aunt Harriet was actually very in tune spiritually, and she even taught Roland some of her practices, including how to use a Ouija board. After the passing of his Aunt Harriet, Roland began to experience some strange things. He began to hear dripping from his walls and his ceiling, scratching on his walls as he was sleeping, and his bed would actually shake from time to time. At first, Roland and his family just thought that this was their Aunt Harriet, just trying to reach out from the other side to say, hello, I'm here. However, when the family did try to communicate with the spirit that was in their home, things just began to get worse. Now even scratches would begin to appear on Roland himself, which was really scary for him and his family. They did actually end up reaching out to the family's pastor just because they weren't exactly sure what to do at this point. The pastor ended up being so intrigued by this boy's case that he actually had Roland spend the night with him just so that he could see everything that was going on during the night. After this point, the pastor then advised the family to actually consult with a Catholic priest because there wasn't much that their local pastor could do for them. The family actually ended up converting to Catholicism and even tried to have Roland baptized, but it was said that he got super angry and just like very upset that he was getting baptized. So I couldn't find if he had actually ended up getting baptized completely or if they had to stop midway through because Roland was just so upset by this fact. By this point, the family had literally tried everything, from medical care to psychiatric help, even spiritualism, and nothing was helping. They decided that their last possible option was to ask if they could have an exorcism performed on Roland. The church actually agreed to perform these exorcisms just because they were seeing all of this evidence and they were convinced that this was actually a case of possession. By the time Roland was 14 years old, and over a span of 2 months, he had received 20 exorcisms. Maybe. This is Agatha. She's the newest member of our family. So if you hear any weird sounds, any like elephant sounds of cats running around, my cat Winifred and my cat Agatha have been like chasing each other consistently for the past like month and a half. So if you hear any weird sounds, that's probably what that is. These exorcisms were not a walk in the park for Roland or the priests that were performing the exorcisms. Oftentimes, Roland would be vomiting and urinating and speaking in a deep Latin voice, and it was a lot for everybody involved. Also during this time, the priests were able to see that Roland had superhuman strength, and he was also extremely violent during these times. During one particular exorcism at Georgetown University Hospital, Roland actually broke free from one of his restraints, was able to get a bed spring from the mattress, and stabbed one of the priests. Although the stab was just in the arm, at that point they decided that they should probably take a break from the exorcisms for a little bit just because like he was actually starting to violently hurt people. So they were like, maybe let's take a little step back. Let's just hang out for a second. This is kind of a lot. So around this time, the family actually decided to visit some of their relatives in St. Louis, Missouri. One of Roland's cousins actually ended up reaching out to a few local priests named Walter Halloran and William Van Roo. These priests came to just observe the boy, observe what was happening, and they witnessed everything that I talked about before. The low, creepy voice, the violent outbursts, the super strength, things moving around him. In addition, at this point, they noticed that he had a strong aversion to holy objects, and he would even go into like a trance-like state and start writing things automatically with like a piece of paper and a pencil, which you see a lot in movies, but I didn't know that there was like actual evidence of people doing that in real life, but I guess they saw it in Roland. After this point, Van Roo and Halloran actually got permission from the local archbishop to perform another exorcism on Roland. The final exorcism of Roland Doe took place in St. Louis, Missouri at Alexian Brothers Hospital. During this final exorcism, words were actually being scratched into Roland's skin. Words like hell and evil, which was something that hadn't been happening before. Very characteristically for Roland, at one point the mattress started violently shaking both him and the entire bed. Allegedly at one point, the boy's voice kind of morphed into a different character named Saint Michael, who was telling the demon inside of Roland to get out. Finally, after this grueling last exorcism, Halloran and Van Roo were able to rid Roland of the demons that were possessing him. And according to the priests, and according to William Friedkin, who actually talked to Roland later in his life, it was said that he went to live a normal, happy life, and he even worked at NASA before retiring. He's since passed away, but he went on to live a very fulfilling life, which is, I guess, what you want when you try to exorcise someone. You want them to be normal. News spread like wildfire about this story. Even one Washington Post article from 1949 stated, "Priests frees Mount Rainier boy from the devil's grip." So author William Peter Blatty was actually attending Georgetown University, and he saw some of these articles, and this is what inspired him to write the book, The Exorcist. He wrote this novel in 1971, and 2 years later it was adapted into the movie The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin. So we can't talk about this story without addressing some of the fallacies that have come up over time regarding this exorcism. If you remember the name of that article, for example, a lot of people thought that this boy was from Mount Rainier, and I couldn't find why people thought he was from Mount Rainier, but he was born in Maryland, and he had his final exorcism in St. Louis. So this was a very widespread misconception about this case. Another thing that we need to talk about is the fact that there was no real evidence of any paranormal activity actually happening to Roland or his family. In fact, many different sources surrounding Roland actually said that he was never possessed at all. One of the priests that actually was a main witness for this case on why he should get an exorcism and why he was possessed was actually not there for any of the progression of Roland's case. He was really just conveying secondhand information that he had heard from other people. So it was like taken as fact, but never really confirmed by anyone. According to one author, Mark Opsenick, who was looking into this case very deeply, he said that depending on your angle, Roland's case looked different. For example, psychiatrists thought that he was mentally ill and needed help. Priests thought that he needed an exorcism because he was possessed. And everyone else thought it was great entertainment. Whatever angle you decided to take for this case, one thing was for sure, and that was that Roland was a trickster and a prankster at heart. He was often known as a class clown, and he played pranks on most of his family members. People looking at this case thought that many of the paranormal things that were happening to Roland could have easily been faked. Many of the words that he was speaking in Latin were actually just words that were often spoken in Mass and in different church services that could be easily picked up if you really wanted to learn them. He was a teenage boy, so he could, have like a different kind of range on his voice. The scratches on Roland's arm technically could have been made by Roland himself. I couldn't find sources that say that anybody really checked like under his nails for like skin or blood or anything like that. So people just think it maybe wasn't a true blue possession case. Many people do see this possession as just a case of a boy wanting some attention. But that's kind of the thing about older cases. You really can't be sure of the information that you're reading all the time. We didn't have the technology that we do now, obviously, so it's harder to prove these kind of things. Whether this case is real possession, real exorcisms, or just fabrication, It does make a great story, which is why the book and the movie The Exorcist are so popular even to this very day. That is all I have for you guys on this story of Roland Doe, Roland Hunkler. Make sure that you keep an eye open for the next 2 videos in this little mini series. I'm really excited about those videos. This video is more just like to give you background information, to give you the origin story. And next week, we're going to get into the dirty details. Please go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already and you're interested in this kind of content. I hope you guys have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day, that you enjoy some sunshine, get some fresh air up in this bitch, and keep being the bad bitches that you are. Bye, guys.